Welcome to another live episode of the Eric Crocker Show. I'm your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back, Eric Crocker. And on today's episode, man, we're talking all things 49ers. 49ers potentially locking up the number one seed, what they have to do to get that, and how important that is to this 49ers team. We'll also talk about this historic pace that the 49ers pass catchers are on. All right, led by Brock Purdy. You have a potential 1,000-yard receivers and a 1,000-yard rusher. We're going to discuss that. And also, Brock Purdy versus Lamar Jackson for MVP. Where the hell did Lamar Jackson come from? Does he have a chance? We're going to discuss all that and more, as well as bring y'all on live. Good morning, everybody. I see people starting to filter in. I see Jay coming in with the flames. All right, 5 flames if you're feeling good. Anything less than that, we need to talk about it. And there's one thing I do want to talk about, and this is not pertaining to anything football, but just championships, a mindset. All right. And me, I'm a Laker fan. I have let that be known. And I know a bulk of my audience are Warrior fans, which is interesting because I didn't even know Warrior fans really existed. But they do. They're out there. There are a lot of Warrior fans now. All right. And I get a lot of, I don't even want to say hate, but a lot of pushback on the 49er, or excuse me, the Lakers hanging that banner, right? They hung the tournament banner, right? They had the in-season tournament, they hung the banner, and it's like, wow, the Lakers are better than that. Like, why would they do that? I guess they're down bad, blah, blah. Hold on. Let's think about this for a second. Is there anything that your kids get that when they are the last man standing or the last person, meaning they beat out everybody else that was participating for that same thing, which is everybody, right? And whatever award they get for that, for being the last person standing, do y'all not celebrate that in your house? Whatever that is. So the Lakers, which Staples Center is their house, they did the in-season tournament, and I thought it was supposed to be something fun, engaging, and I thought it was. And they win the whole thing, and they're like, "All right, we're gonna hang the banner for winning the whole thing." I really didn't think nothing of it, but apparently, Warrior fans and everybody else thinks it's like some kind of joke, all right, or oh no, it doesn't matter, blah blah. The bubble ring, I'll kind of give y'all that a little bit. I've talked to my guy Chris a lot about that, and I feel a certain way about the bubble just because not everybody participated. You had a long 2 months off, and then some people came back. And so I just kind of have my thoughts on that one where it's like, if you want to push back on that, I get it. But when we're talking about this in-season tournament, which is supposed to be something like, we know it's not the actual NBA championship. The Lakers got fucking 17 of them. Or 16 of them before the Lakers got 16 of them before the bubble championship. All right. So if anybody knows about hanging championship banners, it is the Lakers. All right. I watched my Lakers with Kobe Bryant win 5 championships. Okay. So if anybody knows anything about championships and all that, hanging banners, it's the Lakers. But this is something different. It's the first year that the NBA has put this up, and the Lakers happened to win it. And they played everybody out there to play. Everybody had an opportunity. Everybody had a chance at it. And one team won. It was the Lakers, and they hung the banner for being the inaugural winners of this in-season tournament. Now, in-season tournaments, where does it come from? Well, they do it in high school. They do it in college. Like the NBA, who's trying to figure out different ways to be engaging and have some early games matter. That was something that they wanted to add, and it was cool. It was whatever, but the Lakers won. So, all you Warrior fans in my comments saying, "Oh, they're better than that." Are y'all competitive? Because anything I earn, anything I work hard for, anything I beat out everybody else, trust me, you're gonna hear about it. You're gonna see about it. If I beat everybody else, it matters. All right. If everybody else had an opportunity for it, it matters. Like, and I'm just a very competitive person, so maybe I think that way. But it doesn't matter what it is. It could be Mario Kart, and I want to be the champion. Or it could be me and the homie playing tennis. I want to beat everybody. It could be a Madden tournament. Whatever it is. Me and my wife, we go on date nights. We went and played pool. I really want to dog my wife in pool. You know what I'm saying? So maybe it's just different because I'm a super competitive person. So anything that comes from that, like I want that. Give me that. Okay. Oh, there's a $5 Starbucks gift card. I don't even drink that. That might not do it. $10 Starbucks gift card. I don't even drink Starbucks for real. But all right, like I'm gonna go hard. I want that gift card. So the Lakers went hard. They won the inaugural in-season tournament championship, and they hung their banner for it. And for whatever reason, people that don't have nearly the success that the Lakers have had think that they are above hanging that banner. That was really wild. All right. Now, again, we're talking about last man standing. If you are a team like, let's say, the 49ers who don't hang conference championship games, understandable because the job's not done until you win the Super Bowl. And they got 5 of those, right? So if you're like, we don't hang conference championship games because we're waiting until we win the Super Bowl, like, that's understandable. There's still another game to be played. But when you win the in-season tournament thing or you win the bubble ring or whatever, you are the last team standing. Where's our competitive nature at? All right, let's get to some San Francisco 49ers talk. And I think we're going to start off with the 49ers potentially locking up the number 1 seed. We got a present last night. If any of you guys weren't watching Monday Night Football, is the Seattle Seahawks against the Baltimore Ravens. And the present was Seattle driving down the field, their longest drive of the season, and getting a nice touchdown to take the lead and beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Who would have thought? You know, I saw people kind of taking some victory laps on spaces, and they were like, I knew it. I knew it. I'll say this. I knew that there was a chance. And I talked to my big brother about it. My brother's a Cowboy fan. So obviously the Cowboy fans that got dogged by the Buffalo Bills, they needed some help. And we're talking about it yesterday. Matter of fact, I was running on the treadmill and I got him in my ears, and he's like telling me how, you know, hey man, we just need the Seahawks to come through. And I'm like, shoot, we need Seahawks to come through too. Cowboys are fighting for something a little different, right? You first and foremost, when you get to the NFL, like your main goal from the jump, aside from winning the Super Bowl, is you got to win your division. So you get that home playoff game, win your division. Well, the Cowboys right now, prior to the game last night, were not winning the division. And the Philadelphia Eagles were. So it's like, all right, by default, because the Cowboys had lost. And it's like, man, they're going to Seattle, which I saw some numbers. They haven't won, and Philly hasn't won in Seattle in a really long time. All right, really long time. But they got to go to Seattle. They're down, 2 straight games, lost to the Niners, lost to the Cowboys. Surely they're not going to lose to the Seahawks with Drew Lock playing quarterback, right? Wrong. Taking the L. And it was a beautiful touchdown pass from Drew Lock to Jackson Smith and Jigma for the game-winning touchdown. But what did that mean for the 49ers? All right, and I know we don't want to root for the Seattle Seahawks, but I kind of was like, go Seahawks and go 12th man, right? Like you needed Seahawks to kind of win that game. So it gives the 49ers a little bit more cushion, a little bit more wiggle room for that number 1 spot. And they pulled it off. Great. So what does that mean right now? When you look at the standings, and maybe I'll pull up the standings as they are currently on NFL ESPN, on ESPN. All right, we got the playoff rankings up here. Let's pull these things up. Look at where the 49ers are. Look at where everybody else is. There we go. Zoom in. All right. So here we go. What does this mean for San Francisco 49ers? Right now, the 49ers are currently in first place. Maybe I'll zoom out a little bit so we can see who's in 7th place, because to me, that's a little scary team. And 49ers, you might have to play them. All right, there we go. All right, so if you guys can see that, all right, Exhibit A, you got San Francisco 49ers sitting at the top, and now not only have a 1-game lead, right, you got 1 less loss than the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles, well, and the Detroit Lions too, who has taken a loss recently. But you also have the tiebreaker between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's essentially a game and a half. So what they need right now, what they're rooting for, and I saw this in my text messages last night, my big brother and those guys, and they're like, all right, like we still got action at the number 1 seed. And I'm like, no, the hell you don't. They're like, nah, you guys need to lose 2 out of the last 3 games. So the 49ers in their last 3 games, they play the Baltimore Ravens. It's going to be a tough game. Can't wait to watch that on Monday Night Football. You play the Rams last, and who's that game in between? Who's the game in between? Why can't I think of that other game for the Niners? All right. By the way, you got a game in between there. Okay, that Rams game is going to be a little interesting. Is it no? Play Tampa Bay. Who the hell the 49ers play in between the Rams and the Baltimore Ravens? Commanders. There we go. I knew it was a red team. All right. All right. So Washington. All right. So shout out to Eddie. Shout out to GL Kane in the chat. So right now, the 49ers are a game and a half above Dallas Cowboys, a game and a half above the Rams. And I mean, the Detroit Lions are hanging in there. They're right there. Now, last time the 49ers and the Lions had the same record, the 49ers on the tiebreaker for whatever algorithm they figured out or however they did it. But that can change if the 49ers lose like to an NFC team. The good thing the 49ers have going for them right now is they have only lost to one NFC team, and that was the Minnesota Vikings. That really helps the 49ers right now. And then, of course, it helps that they beat Dallas Cowboys, they beat Philadelphia Eagles. But ultimately, I think my biggest thing is you want everything to have to come through the Bay Area. You don't want to have to travel. You don't want to have to travel to Philadelphia, deal with their weather. I don't think you mind traveling to Dallas, but it's cool. Just better to play at home. I think you will have to play one of those teams, the Dallas Cowboys or Philadelphia, in your first playoff game coming off of a bye week. Because as it stands right now, the Dallas Cowboys will play the Los Angeles Rams, which actually, I don't know, Rams kind of scary right now. I'm not going to lie. All right. But then the Philadelphia Eagles play Tampa Bay. And I think we would like to say that that's just a W for the Eagles. But with the way the Eagles are playing right now, maybe that's not just the easiest win for them playing against Tampa. All right. But either way, I'd assume that whoever is in that fifth seed, 49ers have to prepare to play that team. So if it's the Dallas Cowboys, because maybe they lose another game and the Eagles win out, then it's going to be Dallas Cowboys in that fifth spot, and the 49ers will have to play them in the first game, most likely. All right. And if it's the Philadelphia Eagles in that fifth spot, I think they'll beat Tampa Bay, and you'll have to play them in your first game. So the good thing with all that is, one, you'll be very rested. And, we think that is very important for the 49ers, just to kind of make sure that the health is right, make sure everything's good. If you go back to 2019, 49ers had a first round bye. 49ers were the number one seed. They had 2 home playoff games. They had that bye week. Minnesota had to come. 49ers were super rested. They got players back. Remember, D4 was kind of banged up. Quan Alexander kind of banged up. And they were able to get those key pieces back after that bye week. And they were cooking. They were ready to go. All right, so I think that rest really helped the 49ers. You would like for them to be able to get that rest in this game as well, or for the playoffs as well. All right, so that's kind of the playoff picture right there. We will continue to kind of monitor that and see, if the 49ers continue to lock up the number 1 seed. The magic number is 2. That's what I just saw in the chat. All right, Eddie right here. He says, magic number is 2, Croc. 2 wins, and we get the number 1 seed regardless. And it's as simple as that. Now the question is, if you do get the number 1 seed, right, you win those 2 games, week 17 or week 18, whatever week it is, you play the Rams. Do you, and again, we don't want to overlook Baltimore. Like, that's going to be a big time matchup. But do you say, all right, we won these 2 games and you play the Rams, do you sit your starters? And I think traditionally, if you can't move up or down, a lot of times you do like to sit your starters. But do you sit your starters knowing that you have a bye week the next week? So now your starters go 2 weeks without playing. It helps with health, that's for sure. But do you get a little rusty doing it that way? I don't know. I remember Baltimore doing that a couple weeks ago, years ago, and people saying, yeah, they felt like they were a little rusty. So I did watch the Dallas Cowboys 2016. If you remember Dak Prescott's rookie year, Cowboys were terrific. They locked up the number 1 seed. They played their starters for like a drive. And then after that, Tony Romo came in for Dak Prescott, and the Cowboys played a lot of their backups for the rest of that game. And the Cowboys ended up having a bye. So essentially their players had kind of like 2 weeks off a little bit. And then they played the Packers, and they lost to the Packers. Now, it was a good game. So it didn't look like the rest hurt the Cowboys. I thought that the Cowboys looked ready to play. Had to come back a little bit. Dak Prescott, I thought, played a terrific game, especially for a rookie. He played a terrific game, but Aaron Rodgers was just a little bit more terrific. All right. So I think that's the only thing you kind of worry about in that moment. Either way, like my guy Eddie said, got to handle business. The magic number is 2. Win these next 2 games and then play it however you want to play it. All right, shout out to everybody in the chat right now. Appreciate y'all, man. Make sure y'all hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, all that good stuff. All right, we got channel not found in here. It doesn't have a name. Says 49ers fans, stop jinxing the team. Don't celebrate anything till the Super Bowl. I don't think we're celebrating anything. I think we're talking about hypothetical situations. All right, I think we're talking about hypothetical situations. All right, I did see Big Dez in the chat, and he says Rams balling like that. I wouldn't say that the Rams are necessarily balling, but I would say that they are. They remind me of the 2021 49ers. It really is kind of like weird how it's like word for word, bar for bar, like 2021 49ers. Remember, 49ers started off 3-5, and they had to rally late and make the playoffs. How did the 49ers make the playoffs 2021? All right, I'll tell you guys. The 49ers made the playoffs 2021 because they rallied after starting 3-5, like the Rams started 3-5 this year. And then they needed a week 18 win on the road against the Rams to make the playoffs. And if everything kind of shakes out how it's looking right now, I think the Rams will need, after starting 3-5, like the 49ers did that year, a week 18 road win against the 49ers. So the only thing that's changing is different positions for the Rams and the Niners. And the Rams might have been fighting for a bye in that game as well. So a lot of storylines kind of matching up. Are they balling? I don't know, but do I take the Rams very serious? Hell yeah. And terrific coaching job by Sean McVay to get a team to, start off the way they did. You play games without Matthew Stafford. You play a lot of the season without Cooper Kupp. He was kind of banged up. And we can't really name, we can name some guys on their team, but it's not like they have like all these like stalwarts. It's not like they have all these like amazing players. It's Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and the others. All right. And they are doing a terrific job of coaching up the others, doing a terrific job of coaching up guys like Puka Nacua, getting that rookie ready and really kind of ready to lock up offensive rookie of the year. Kyron Williams, he's doing a terrific job, and he missed some time there, but he came back. He's playing very well. He's running well. He's catching the ball well. Defensively, they're doing a really good job with guys. So the Rams coaching staff, shout out to them, because we can't name a lot of these guys on their team. And with the guys that they feel like, hey, you got to kind of carry us to these playoffs, they're doing a really good job of that. So are they balling? I mean, they're 7-7. But I think those kind of teams are scary because it's kind of like, we ain't got nothing to lose. All right, but we're just going to keep it. We're going to keep rocking. We're going to keep rocking. GOK says, what would you do, EC? Would you rest your starters if you clinch, if we win the next 2 games? That's a great question. I would go with I'm going to prepare you to start. I'm going to play you for a couple drives, and then I probably pull you out and then let the reserves play. That's kind of how I would go about it. Like, you finna get touched a little bit. All right. And then I want to make sure that, all right, we're good. We're engaged. You got your pads and stuff on the sideline. And then, all right, then you go into having that bye week. That's how I would play if the 49ers win the next 2 games. Shout out to my guy Abel in the chat. All right, he said, that's why I said we need to beat their ass if they need it. Hell yeah. Rams, yeah, dog them. But again, you want to beat that Rams ass and potentially lose a player, right? Like, that's the part right there. And I don't know. 49ers, they're rolling right now. And I think when you watch the 49ers for the first 5 weeks, they were rolling. And then they had a couple of injuries. You had Deebo Samuel get hurt. You had Trent Williams get hurt. And then y'all tell me that that's the reason why the 49ers lost the next 3 games. Hey, you're missing these key pieces. right? So if it's that important that you have those guys, right? I mean, along with everybody else, because this team is loaded. So it's not like it's Trent Williams and Debo. And if you lose them, it's like, oh man, like who else do you have, right? Like let's say Detroit Lions. If the Detroit Lions lose, was it not Mikey Potty, Sewell, right? The kid from Oregon, right? The left tackle from Oregon, or it might be right tackle, whatever tackle he is right now, but from Oregon. If you lose him and then you lose St. Brown, like who are you? You know what I'm saying? Okay, you got your running back Gibbs, like he's doing well. Montgomery, he's cool. But it's like, damn, we're throwing the Josh Reynolds all game, all right. Like they're hurting. 49ers is like, oh yeah, you lose your tackle, you lose Debo, but it's like still got CMC, still got Ayuk, still got Kittle, right? You still got guys. So for the 49ers, they lost a couple guys, and then y'all told me how important that was, and that's the reason why they were kind of losing some of those games or weren't the same offensively. So because of that, I would err on the side of caution and sit guys. I don't like the thought of what it looked like in those 3 weeks where it just felt like the offense couldn't do anything consistent. 17 points in 3 straight games. This is a good one from Eddie. He says, we lost Ayuk for a game and still put up points. And that's how it should be, right? Now, you lost Ayuk and, you played the Giants. Could you lose Ayuk? And again, I don't know the answer to this. Could you lose Ayuk and beat a Browns team that has really good corners? Could you lose Ayuk and beat Philadelphia Eagles team, who Bradbury a little weird, but like, could you lose Ayuk and beat the Dallas Cowboys? I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think I want to find out the answer to that. So I would err on the side of caution and rest guys. All right. Appreciate everybody in here. Let's talk about some other things that's going on right now. And your San Francisco 49ers right now, their offense is on a historic pace to do something, that hasn't been done in a long time. And that is have 3 1,000-yard receivers along with a 1,000-yard rusher. All right. So I'm looking at the numbers right now. Brandon Ayuk with 3 games to go has 1,090 yards. The interesting thing about Brandon Ayuk, with 3 games to go, already having 1,090 yards, I remember saying, man, if he was in a different offense, like he'd be a 1,400-yard receiver. And I still believe, like, if he was in a different offense right now, he would have 1,300. But he has like these weird games when you start to kind of look through Brandon Ayuk's numbers and kind of like look at some games, and it's like, bro, how did it get kind of weird in that spot? Well, because the 49ers in any given game can just kind of like go away from a guy. So I'm looking at Brandon Ayuk stats right now, and there's games like in Seattle, Thursday Night Football, even though he scored a touchdown, and we'll remember that terrific catch by him, terrific throw by Brock Purdy on the touchdown pass, but he only had 4 targets in that game. 2 catches, 4 targets. Last game against the Arizona Cardinals, Brandon Ayuk, 37 yards, only 37 yards on 5 targets, 3 catches, right? So he has like these weird games that a lot of other guys don't have this many weird games where you're just not targeted a whole lot. Against Jacksonville, he had 55 yards on 3 targets for an entire game. All right, like, and for a guy who is like your number 1 receiver, kind of your main, kind of threat downfield, things like that, I feel like they just tend to kind of go away from guys at times. So I still feel like if he was on another team that emphasized getting him the ball a little bit more, he'd have more yards. Now, maybe because they don't do that, other guys have an opportunity as well to get 1,000 yards. Deebo Samuel, he has 787 yards right now. So we're talking about 213 yards away from going over 1,000 yards. He has 3 games to do it. So maybe you guys can tell me what the math is on that. I'll pull up my handy dandy calculator right now, and let's go 213 divided by 3. So Deebo has to average 71 yards per game to go over 1,000 yards, or to get 8,000 yards. All right. So let's say he has to average 71.5 yards per game to go over 1,000 yards. 3 games, 71.5 yards he has to average. Can he do it? Will he do it? Again, because of how this offense is, maybe he can have one game where he has like 140 yards, and that really helps him. And then another game he has 70 yards. So then the last game he only needs like, I don't know, shoot, 5 yards or something like that. That definitely can happen with Deebo Samuel. All right, that definitely can happen. Now DJ Level says he already has 1,000 yards from scrimmage, and that could be the case. Now I haven't looked at Debo's. Let's look at pull up his stats real quick. All right. I don't know how many rushing yards Deebo Samuel has. 172. So he is, I don't think he has 1,000 scrimmage yards, but he's close. He is very close. I think he's like 50 yards shy. If my math is correct, 50 yards shy. So Deebo right there. Either way, George Kittle, 865 receiving yards right now. That means he is roughly 35, right? 135 yards away. So he has 3 games to get 135 yards. And that is, all right, that's 135 divided by 3. So he needs to average 45 yards a game. So I think it actually is kind of likely that George Kittle goes over 1,000. Deebo, that's going to be the interesting one. And also, we got to remember, Deebo he missed the game. First of all, he did miss the game. I missed the game as well. So they're doing these numbers well. They did miss a game. But Deebo missed the game. And then Deebo had a game against the Arizona Cardinals where they did not target him for an entire game. He was out there. Damn near every play, Deebo was on the field. And he got 0 targets for an entire game. The reason why I remember this game specifically is because I actually had him on Underdog Fantasy, and he did not get a target. And I was like, what the hell? All right, but I think they kind of used him as a decoy. He was coming off of an injury, wasn't feeling good. They didn't even know if he would be able to suit up. He did suit up. All right, so Deebo has missed time, and again, had that Arizona game where early in the season where he just did not get a target. Otherwise, he might very well have 1,000 yards right now. And then you have Christian McCaffrey, who is already over 1,000 rushing yards. So he's there. And 17, there we go. We got, he said, Deebo, he was out in those 3 straight losses. Well, he missed 2 of those games. He played in one, but left early in the first quarter. And then again in that Arizona game. So we got really kind of 4 games where Deebo was kind of like inactive for the most part. All right. So he would probably easily have 1,000 yards right now. But then you have Christian McCaffrey, who has almost 1,300 rushing yards. And I think for him, and I don't know the 49ers record for rushing, but I know Frank Gore had a really big season. I want to say year 2. So let's look at Frank Gore. All right, see if we can pull his numbers up right now. All right, and look at his best season rushing. If I'm not mistaken, it was like a 1,600-yard season. So he had 1,695. That was year 2 from Frank Gore. That's the most yards he ever ran for. That's probably the 49ers record. And does Christian McCaffrey break that? I don't know. He'd need roughly 400 yards to do it, right? Pretty much right at 400 yards over 3 games. So he can. We didn't see him break off and have some big runs, but he need to go over 1,695 yards. Need over 400 yards. I don't know if that happens, but either way, this 49ers offense right now is on a historic pace, and I think they are doing an amazing job. And it is led by one player who we will talk about in just a second. DJ Level says we need Kittle to get 1,000 receiving so we can have 4 players with 1,000 from scrimmage and 4,000-yard passer. Never done before, I think. That would be amazing. And I think when people talk about Kyle Shanahan and the legend that he is, I think getting guys in position to do that, right, utilizing them to their strengths, being able to get the most out of guys, I think this is probably like Kyle's best work ever because they're so efficient. They are so aggressive. They're so, think punctual just with everything that they do offensively. And it starts from the top down, and it starts with Kyle Shanahan. So great job. We got Gio Kane. He says Jerry Rice had 22 touchdowns, 12 games. Mind blowing. Yeah. Matter of fact, he ain't had 22 touchdowns, Gio. He had 23 touchdowns. He also had a rushing touchdown in that season. In 12 games, it was a shortened season due to a strike. So they only played 12 games, 23 touchdowns. And people argue about who the GOAT is. That's silly. That's just silly. I appreciate everybody's in the chat right now. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We got one more topic we're going to get to, but also I want to put in here the link to the chat. So if anybody wants to come on live, feel free to come on and let's talk about it. But we got Brock Purdy versus Lamar Jackson MVP talk, and those two guys are playing against each other. Now, a lot of what I'm seeing, right? I've seen it in chats. I've seen it in chats, when I'm talking on Locked On 49ers. I've seen it in chats on here. I have seen it in chats on social media. And people are like, where the hell did Lamar Jackson come from? They're trying to find anybody to throw in front of Brock Purdy. I don't know if that's exactly what's going on, but I will say this. Brock Purdy is the NFL MVP. Like, Brock Purdy is running away with the award. The only way Brock Purdy does not run away with the award is if he has 3 straight games like the Browns game, where he just did not play well. And because we've only seen Brock really play like that one time, I don't foresee any scenario where he does that for 3 straight games to end the season. So, in my eyes, Brock Purdy, who is the big favorite to win the MVP, will be the NFL MVP. Now, when you hear people talk about Lamar Jackson, I kind of phrased it like this, and I was talking to my guy Chris about it. All right. When Chris brought it up, he's like, why are they talking about Lamar Jackson? Why are they talking about that? And I'm like, look, at the end of the day, when people look back and they say, who is the 2023 NFL MVP? They're going to say Brock Purdy is. All right. But in every MVP race, there are multiple guys that have the opportunity to win MVP. So you can have one guy that's going to run away with it, and that is Brock Purdy. Christian McCaffrey probably should be in that mix. Tyreek Hill, he's kind of banged up the last couple of weeks. That might slow things down for him. But Brock Purdy is the guy. But there has to be other people that are at the very least up for the award. So that's where guys like Lamar Jackson come into play. And what Lamar Jackson is doing is really good. Now, it's not the eye-popping numbers, and I think Brock is leading in that category, which is still kind of weird because you start to look at like MVPs of the past, and I saw JT Sullivan. He had a tweet. He was like, who has had a great year that I might have started. Let me see if I bookmarked it. All right, but he was actually bookmarks, all bookmarks. I did not bookmark it. All right, but essentially JT Sullivan was asking, he's like, who has had numbers like Brock and not win the MVP? And you did not win the MVP. And the names that came up really multiple times, Drew Brees. Drew Brees had a year. He had a season in 16-game season, because you got 17 games now. All right. Drew Brees had a 16-game season where he threw a lot more than Brock Purdy, but he threw for 4,600 yards, 5,400 yards. Excuse me. Drew Brees threw for 5,400 yards, 46 touchdowns, and he did not win MVP because some other guys did some historically great stuff. And he had multiple seasons like that. 5,400 yards, 46 touchdowns, did not win NFL MVP. That is wild, right? I mean, that's just a wild season. And this team was good, 13-3. So it's not even like, well, maybe he didn't play on that good of a team. No, he played in a really good team. They actually got bounced out by the 49ers, 49ers versus Saints game. But played on a really good team. Got bounced out by the Niners. He had a historically great year and did not win NFL MVP. All right, now, this year with Brock Purdy, it feels like and this is my thoughts. Actually, let me start with this because I want to make sure that I make this clear. Brock Purdy is the NFL MVP, and I don't think that there's anybody else that's going to touch him. You have to throw other people in the conversation. There's just other guys that might get a vote or two, maybe, but there's just other people up for the award, and Lamar Jackson is one of those guys. I think Lamar Jackson, deservedly so, is up for MVP. This is a guy who is really he has to do a lot of the heavy lifting on his team. And that's not to say that Brock isn't doing a terrific job with what he's doing. Again, Brock Purdy should be NFL MVP. But Lamar Jackson, what he's doing, uh, it's hard. I'm pretty sure he'll tell you, like, man, there's a lot on me. He has to run for first downs. He has to throw for first downs. He's not having his most efficient with the numbers, but I guarantee you this: 49ers right now, if I asked any of y'all, hey man, 49ers play Baltimore Ravens, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? What's the first thing that you think the 49ers need to stop? What's the first thing you think the 49ers need to slow down? What's the first thing y'all think the 49ers need to prepare for? And I guarantee you, 99.9% of everybody in this chat will say, you're playing Baltimore, you got to prepare for Lamar. Like, that's what's on Lamar. So he's leading the team right now that everybody's preparing for him. And they are 11-3. They have the best record in the AFC. All right. Defense is playing well too. And again, we're going to get into their defense later in the week on Thursday or Friday. But ultimately, when you think about like MVP talk and you hear people inserting Lamar Jackson in that conversation, it's deservedly so for Lamar. He will not win it. Brock Purdy will win it. But if they're bringing up Lamar, it's because, again, he's leading the team, best team in the AFC right now. And if I ask you who you got a game plan for, y'all all gonna say Lamar. Now, if you flip it, and this is for people that are making a case against Brock, which I think at this point is probably silly. If you ask, hey, who you guys game planning for? Like, hey, Baltimore, who you they're gonna probably say Christian McCaffrey. Probably gonna say Deebo Samuel. They're definitely gonna say Kyle Shanahan. I think they say a few people before you get to Brock Purdy. And that's not to take away from Brock Purdy, what he's doing. But I think when you hear some people kind of push back on how important he is to the 49ers, which we know he's very important, it comes off like, I think that's why. Do got one guy calling in right now. Definitely about to bring him on. Get into a couple of these in the chat right now. I see Jay says Lamar elevates it. My guy Chris tried to. Well, last year they made the playoffs. He was banged up. Yeah, they won 3 out of their last 7 games. I'm like, bro, they won 3 out of their last 7 games. He's like, but they showed they could win without him. They won 3 out of their last 7 games, Chris. What you talking about? But then when you have Lamar, who have been banged up for the past couple years, but you have him for a full year, this is what you get. An 11-3 team that's number 1 seed in the AFC right now. Like, that's the Lamar effect. That is the Lamar effect. All right. He is doing a great job. Gio says, why we didn't beat Philly if Brock Purdy ain't important to us? We had everyone else. Brock Purdy is important. Brock Purdy is important to us. I just said that. And again, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Matter of fact, I'm bringing on my guy, Shunda Boy, right now. Shunda Boy, how are you doing, Shunda Boy?
What's going on, bud? I'm good. How you doing, Croc?
I'm good. I have a question for you.
Okay.
If you right now were game playing 49, right? Here's how hard we gotta get our defense ready. Where do you start?
Christian McCaffrey.
Right. So
and then Deebo, and you might even game plan Kittle before you game plan for Brock Purdy.
And I don't think that's a slight, because you know what?
It's not.
I think the more evidence, the more data that we gather, eventually that may turn, right? Eventually, over the next year, teams might start going into games saying, you know what? Yeah, we need to prepare for these guys because they have all these great players, but the buck starts with Brock Purdy. I don't think people are there yet. And again, I say that, maybe I'll ask this offseason, I'll get some players on that maybe played against the Niners and they'll let me know. But I think it starts with the other guys and then gets to Brock, but eventually that may flip. Eventually.
So the question I would ask to people who are kind of like push back on that would be, how many quarterbacks in their second year in the NFL are the primary focus of the opposing team's defense when they're game planning? Like 3 in the history of the NFL who in their second season were the main focus of the. It's just not. We're comparing Brock to 10-year starters. It's not apples to apples in many ways. when you're talking about game planning for a team and so on and so forth. You can have the comparisons as far as statistics and how they're playing, but to compare like, oh, this guy's more dangerous than that guy, it's not really. It's a false equivalency in some regards.
Right. And I think that's, some guys you kind of see how they're doing certain things and whatnot. I think Richard Sherman might tell you it always starts with the coordinator. But
Mm-hmm.
look at the other guys too. And this is the part I think, and great point, Shanty Boy. I think this is the part that people are kind of losing track of. When you are talking about Brock and some of the things that or people that we're comparing him to and what he's doing, it's typically high level people. It's typically people that are playing at a very high level. Like I brought up something and I'm like, man, I just kind of want to see this, well, let's see him do this. And I'm in the same sentence, I'm bringing up guys like Tom Brady and people are like, oh, like you're just talking to. I'm like, bro, I just brought up Tom Brady in the same sentence as Brock Purdy. Like Tom Brady, how am I downplaying anything he's doing? I just brought up Tom. I didn't say, well, he kind of needs that Kirk Cousins in him. And this isn't a slide at Kirk Cousins. All right, maybe Kirk Cousins do very well tonight, but it's not like I said Kirk. It's not like I'm saying Taylor Heineke. Like I'm talking about the greatest, right? And it's like, hey man, you see this, okay, we're cooking, right? So you talked about how even in year two, some of these guys that you start to focus on, like who are they? Well, in recent years, the two guys that won the MVP award, Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. I think Patrick Mahomes year two, it started to be very clear, especially like towards the middle of the year, like this Mahomes dude's kind of good, and he threw for 50 touchdowns.
And I'd be willing to bet there's a lot more teams game planning for Brock Purdy later in this season than they were at the beginning of the season. I think that if you go back and look at the Chiefs, the year that Mahomes won the MVP, early in that season, they were game planning for Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and their run game because they had a nasty running back at the time. So, I don't think the conversation was any different for the Chiefs in the first half of the season, the year he won an MVP and blew the doors off the NFL. So obviously later in the season, they start game planning more for Patrick Mahomes, but it didn't stop them from game planning for Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Again, it's another false equivalency where people are not considering the time frame. Again, your favorite word. There's no context to the argument or the discussion.
We see that a lot. How are you feeling about this 49ers team right now?
I definitely, I'm trying not to jinx them. I'm trying not to get too overhyped stuff, but I'm on the same train as everybody that basically says the only team that's going to beat the Niners is themselves, or injuries, obviously. I don't think that there's another team that you can say is better than them at almost any spot. I mean, there's a handful of teams you can say they have a better quarterback. There's a handful of teams that you can say have a better offensive line, maybe, or something like that. But they're better across the board, matched up head to head with basically every team. And the teams they're going to actually play, the Phillies, the Dallas, the Lions, probably the Rams, like the teams they're going to actually play in the playoffs, they match up tremendously well against those teams. And then the AFC teams that they're going to have to play, potentially the Bengals if their quarterback stays playing really well. Obviously, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Bills are all kind of in that conversation. The Dolphins, obviously, but we match up really well against all of them as well. So I think it's a matchup problem for every other team in the NFL when they play us.
I think this is the first time in a really long time where I felt like the 49ers is just there is no team that I'm scared of. Like I just feel like now that is not to say that the 49ers can't be beaten, right? Like we've seen them lose, so we know that we can. We saw them lose 3 straight. Matter of fact, to teams that you should win. So we know the 49ers can lose, but the games where it was okay, you got to get up for this game. They beat those teams in such a dominant fashion that, and then we continue to see how well they're playing, how well the quarterback Brock Purdy is playing. I find it hard to go into a game and think, oh man, 49ers gonna. I don't know how they're gonna win this game, and that was how I felt. I remember the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. I actually prior to the start of the playoffs, so like right when the playoffs were about to start, I went on Twitter. I have to find these tweets, and I put together like a this team is going to beat this team, this team's going to beat this team, then the 49ers have to play this team in the championship game, and then they're going to be in the Super Bowl. And in the AFC is going to be this team, they beat this team, and you're going to see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And people are like, well, Eric, you named all these other, how you think it's going to play out. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? And I'm like, I don't know. Basically, I was not confident that the 49ers were going to beat Kansas City. And then you start to see it play out. You start to see it all kind of how it's shaking out. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then all of a sudden, it's the 49ers versus Chiefs, just like I predicted. And that was the game where I'm like, I was scared of giving any type of prediction because I just didn't feel confident that, oh, this is a game 49ers are going to go in and win. This year, I am very confident that, like, if I do one of those in the, like this, 49ers are going to win the Super Bowl. And if they don't, I think it'll be along the lines of what you just said, which is, they did something to shoot themselves in the foot, or they had a bad injury that they couldn't overcome, or it would have to be something along those lines to knock this team off. Because right now, it would be hard to find a team that is playing better and plays better in moments than what you get from the 49ers and has the explosive offense they do combined with a defense that can take the ball away. And I know they gave up 29 points to the Arizona Cardinals, but they can as easily give up only 10 and still put up 40. So that's a very dangerous team. And I'd say one of the more dangerous teams I've seen over the last decade, especially with how efficient this offense is playing.
I agree entirely with that. I think you just look no further than Vegas. We're going to be the betting favorite in every single game we play the rest of the season, except maybe, of course, week 18 if we're sitting guys. So, but that's just kind of how that's going to play out. So I got a question for you about the MVP award and stuff, because I had kind of an idea. I kind of stole it from somebody else and then changed it some. So I heard somebody say that the NFL should go towards the idea of more like a Cy Young type award for quarterbacks. Instead of because in pro baseball, for those that don't know, they have a Cy Young award, which goes to basically the best pitcher every year. Otherwise the pitcher would win the award every year because they're considered like an ace pitcher is like the most valuable guy you can get and stuff. And so if they change the award in the NFL, and instead of adding a Johnny Unitas award for quarterbacks, if they just replaced the MVP award, which everybody pretty much just agrees that it's essentially a quarterback award. And if you don't have like an all-time record-breaking season as a skill player, you can't win the award, or a defensive player, something like that. And then you also have to have a down year from the quarterbacks like we have this year statistically. So I think if they go with the MVP award, change it and make it like the Johnny Unitas award, it's for quarterbacks. It actually elevates the offensive player of the year award and the defensive player of the year award. And now instead of having one prestigious award and a couple of consolation prizes, you now have three prestigious awards that people are trying to get. And I think that actually would create a better overall product in that way.
I think that's amazing. And I think that would shut up a lot of the bitching that goes on, especially coming from me. Like, I'm one of those guys where I'm like, man, this is stupid. Like, Tyreek Hill, like, he's so dangerous. Like, look what he's doing. Nobody can stop him. He goes in these games and it's like he has no chance to win NFL.
None.
And the last guy that we've seen, because Christian McCaffrey should be in the conversation, 100%. Yeah. But it's almost like an afterthought because we just know more. He's just not going to win. Like, he's just not. We feel like he probably like could or should.
So I have a thought experiment. I did this with Gammon actually, I think yesterday. So I'd like to do this thought experiment with you, and I'm curious how it'll turn out. So, and it just kind of illustrates the difference between skill players and quarterbacks. If every team in the NFL tomorrow lost their quarterback, how many of them would be willing to trade their best skill player for Brock Purdy?
Okay, wait, hold on. Rephrase that question again.
If all the teams needed a quarterback, right? The Chiefs don't have Mahomes and the Bills don't have Allen, whatever. If all the teams need a quarterback, how many would be willing to trade their best skill player for Brock Purdy?
Ooh,
almost all of them.
Almost all of them.
Not all of them.
It would depend on who is their backup quarterback.
And would you trade Tyreek Hill to get Brock Purdy? Maybe not. But would you trade? Would the Bills trade Stephon Diggs? Would the Raiders trade Devontae Adams? And they would do that trade in a heartbeat. There's a lot of teams that would. So
To
the
me,
other side of the hold on real quick. The other thought of this thought experiment is if every team in the NFL has their quarterback, but their top skill player goes down, how many of them would be willing to trade their quarterback for Christian McCaffrey? A lot less.
yeah, yeah,
And it illustrates how important there's a reason. So the most valuable player award, it goes to the person that is most responsible for the success of the team. That's what the award is essentially supposed to be. And the reason the quarterback wins it more often than not is because every team knows if your quarterback goes down, you're kind of screwed.
correct.
And the quarterback is the most important person as far as wins and losses. It's why so many people attach quarterback wins as a stat, which I think is kind of dumb, but it's why so many people do it, is because they're the most important person when it comes to the success of the team. However, if you lose a Christian McCaffrey, do the 49ers fall off a cliff, or we couldn't put JPP in there and we're not going to be as productive, but we're still going to win games?
49ers went to the conference championship game with Elijah Mitchell at running back. And that's not to slight
So,
Elijah Mitchell, but that
no,
just goes
yeah,
still function. Right.
you can sub out a Christian McCaffrey or a Debo. I actually think the reason that those games were lost the way they were was actually more Trent Williams than Debo. I do think Debo is really critical to our offense and how he makes defenses' eyes adjust and the way he basically changes mid-play, how people have to play a certain thing. And I think that there's a lot of people that maybe don't get deep into the schematics of things that don't really understand how valuable that is to an offense, especially the way we operate it. I think Trent Williams actually would be the MVP of our team, not CMC, if it's not Brock Purdy.
Now here's the thing, right? And I can't speak for every team, but I definitely can speak for the 49ers. There has been a lot of bashing going on on Jimmy Garoppolo. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to use that words like bashing and all that, but that's what's going
No,
on. Like
yeah,
all of a sudden, like he's the village idiot, like he's trash, he sucks, all that.
yeah.
So the one thing that the 49ers can say is, heck, if we just have competent quarterback play, like we're still rocking and rolling. You know what I'm saying? We got competent quarterback play from a guy and propped him up and made him look like not an MVP candidate, but definitely somebody who was top of the league in a lot of statistical categories, from efficiency to whatever it was. And you knew, like, if Jimmy's at quarterback, like we're likely going to go deep in the playoffs. Like that was just kind of we got accustomed to that. But then he goes to another team, and now all of a sudden he can't function the same for whatever reason, right? Like it just doesn't look the same. And I watched the games; it didn't look the same. All right, so there is that element of it where a guy fits in something so perfect that this is a great situation and position for you, as opposed to somewhere else where it might just be different. And what they ask of you isn't something that is necessarily a strength of yours. So, I think Brock Purdy is MVP, not because of 49ers weapons or anything like that, but he just fits what the 49ers do so well. And we've gone back to his scouting report. Like his scouting report basically screams, hey, 49ers, come get me. You know what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden 49ers come get him, and it's a match made in heaven. And now all of a sudden he's amazing. That might be the case with, like, let's say Drew Brees back in the day, right? Played with the Chargers, he was cool. Then all of a sudden you get matched up with Sean Payton, and even without having like the best weapons, we're talking about, Colston and whoever the hell else. But now I'm an MVP caliber quarterback every year. So, and that's a different. Now, maybe it was just he just got wiser, older, whatever, or maybe it just was a better fit with the system and the coach for him. And not to say he's a system quarterback, but that was a better fit for him. And all of a sudden, we see the best version of Brock of Breeze ever, right? So, with the 49ers, it's interesting because let's say, hypothetically speaking, you do lose Brock, and that would be tough. If now you have, Sam Darnold, who, if he's competent, if you can just get more out of him, or as
Is he?
I think that when I watched him in practice and I watched him in some of the preseason games, without having great talent around him, he looked like he understood what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to do certain things. I saw him make certain throws where I don't know how consistent that would be, because that's been his issue throughout his career, right? Consistency. But it did look like somebody that the 49ers are from practice to the preseason games, it did look like somebody that was like, he gets it. Like he understands what Kyle is asking him to do. Now, can you do that?
The offense can still function.
Right, yeah. Can you do that
Yeah.
week after week? And then I don't know, right? I don't know that part, and that's probably why he is a backup. But that would be interesting to see, um, you know, from a talent perspective, Brock Purdy versus Sam Darnold. What would that look
Hmm.
like? You know what I'm saying? And hopefully we never know. Hopefully Purdy stays healthy. But I do get your point on, trading a skill position player for, a Brock to have him come in. But again, if let's say you are the Miami Dolphins and Tua goes down, and you're like, all right, Tua goes down, but the 49ers just made Brock Purdy available in this hypothetical situation. You trade Tyreek Hill to the 49ers and you put Brock in that offense. I don't know what that would look like. Yeah, I don't know if you know what I'm saying. Maybe it looks the same. Maybe he still kills it with Mostert, who has like 20 something touchdowns right now. Maybe still kills it with Jalen Waddle. But I know there is a chance that it also looks different than what.
So what if you take the so the same thing that you're saying there, and you flip the thought experiment? If you trade Debo Samuel to the Dolphins for Tua, how much better or worse are the Dolphins? Now they're playing with Skylar Thompson, but they have all those weapons. Are they still one of the top teams in the AFC? I don't think they are.
Well, I don't know if they are right. I don't know if they're a top team in the
It
AFC,
might not be right now. Yeah.
but
So
they still a playoff team.
yeah. So it's like I think that if you just take, and again, it's a wild hypothetical. It has no real world relevance. It's just a thought experiment.
I think it's hard to use the 49ers, right?
Of
Because
course.
we just watched Nick Mullins in a game the other day against the Bengals. I think I was watching, and it was just like, why do you do some of the stuff you do? Yeah, they're like that. What do you do for like 300 yards and
Yeah.
a chance and threw a couple of touchdown passes? And I remember Nick Mullins back with the 49ers, a guy who threw for the third most yards in NFL history through his first 16
Through
starts.
16.
That's wild. But you lost a lot of games. And people are like, well, but he lost a lot of games. It's like, yeah, he lost a lot of games, but who the hell was he playing with? Like, it was not
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. No.
Kyle was still figuring out a way to have him, at the very least, productive. He turned the ball over, losing too many games, etc. But it's like, you know, if he had CMC, if he had, Debo healthy the whole time, which he didn't have in 2020, right? If he had, Ayuk, which he did, and Ayuk had a good year, but then he also has George Kittle, who was hurt 2020. Like if he had Trent Williams protecting his blind side, if he had a defense that was like, would we had seen maybe a better version of a guy who, even going through all that, still had the third most yards in 16 start. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's really weird what, like, even more so than other teams with the 49ers, because with how stacked and loaded this team is and how well they're playing on both sides, it's hard to know exactly what the drop off would look like. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. And it's not one of those things like, well, we saw better on a bad team. Well,
Yeah.
we saw Mullins on a bad team and then an injury riddled team. They were so hurt 2020. So I just don't know.
Well, so there's two things you can look at to shine some
I,
light.
I don't think that he would be playing at an MVP level like Brock. I will say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So even when Jimmy had all the pieces, and people want to try to compare numbers and stuff, it obviously didn't look the same. There's a couple things I look at that you can compare. So one thing is Jimmy Garoppolo. They never put up season-long stats for Jimmy. Aside from the fact that he only completed like 2 seasons in his career, everything with Jimmy is 5-game sample sizes, 6-game sample sizes. Jimmy Garoppolo could obviously turn it on and play well for a few games at a time, 5-6 games. He could play really well, but he couldn't play well for an entire season. He had to be carried at times throughout the season. Even when the 49ers lost a couple of games this year, Brock Purdy wasn't being carried. He played well early on in the Bengals game, didn't play well in the second half. Every quarterback has games like that. He played well in the game where it's raining and everything else. He played average, but he played well enough at the end of the game to put his team in position to win, which is what you want a quarterback to do. His kicker missed a 40-yarder, right? So it's like you have to, again, take some context. It wasn't like in those 3 games he just played terribly and that's why we lost. The defense also gave up like 30 points, didn't they, in a couple of those games? So it's not the same comparison. And the other thing that you can say to that is when Jimmy Garoppolo got CMC and had the full bevy of weapons, the team elevated from, I think, 18 or 19 points a game to 24. When Brock Purdy was inserted into the same team, it went from 34 or 24 to 32. It was a full touchdown jump or something along those. I don't know the specific stats. I'm sure I'm going to get crushed for missing it by 2 points. But it was like a full touchdown jump when Brock Purdy came in the game. And when you look at the stats a little bit deeper, the red zone efficiency is amongst the top that Kyle Shanahan has ever had as a coordinator. They're much more effective in the red zone than they have been at any point in time in Kyle Shanahan's career, and that includes when he was in Atlanta. Now, Atlanta was the only team that was kind of on the same level, but we score all. How many times? When's the last time Moody kicked a field goal? Kicked one last week. The one before that was in Thanksgiving. Like, we don't kick field goals. Our red zone efficiency is significantly better. How many times did Robbie Gould had like 30 field goals this season because our red zone efficiency was middle of the league? And also, Jimmy Garoppolo would have stretches where he's really good on third downs, but then have 4 games in a row where he's 30% on third down. Brock Purdy has never had a game where he's throwing 20 or 30% on third down, I don't think. He consistently plays well in the parts of the game that are the most important and that translate to points on the board and successful games. So I think that you have to look at, you can look at completion percentage and stuff like that. Yes, Kyle dials up throws that make it easy to have a 70% completion percentage. But you have to also look at when you look at the tape, why does the offense look so much cleaner? It's because where the ball is being placed within the timing and the rhythm of the offense. Jimmy would see something late and have the release speed, and he had good zip on the ball and those things over the middle and stuff where he could fit something in there. But it's not the same as when you throw something ahead of time. Now a wide receiver can adjust to the ball. He turns, the ball's already in the air. He can adjust everything from that point to be able to catch it in stride and run. And that's a totally different thing.
Gotcha. Man, I'm going to get you off and get to the next caller, but I appreciate you coming on. Great stuff as always.
I appreciate you. Brock Purdy is the MVP this year.
Brock Purdy is 100% the MVP. No doubt about it. All right, here we go. About to get to the next caller. I do want to get to some of these from the chat right here, super chats. We got, Lamar is very gettable. He got sacked a couple times last game. He is gettable, but even then, it's still like when you're going in and your game planning, it's like, stop Lamar. Slow down Lamar. How are we game planning against Lamar? I did see some people in the chat say, if you plugged him into this offense and stuff like that, like it would look different. One thing about Kyle Shanahan, he is, I don't want to say a control freak, but he is really looking for, in my opinion, a very specific kind of quarterback. And with Trey Lance, he thought he had the best of both worlds with that, but I think he just didn't realize how much work he was going to have to put in to get Trey to do those things that he needed him to do at a consistent level. And that was going to take time. He's like, I haven't got time for this, right? Then he found Brock, and he's like, ooh, Brock does it all the time. This is amazing. This is what I need. When you talk about Lamar Jackson, Lamar, I think with Kyle, because he wants it done this way, right? I think he would change up his whole offense to say, all right, yeah, Lamar, these are things you do. You don't do this exactly how I want. You don't hit these ones exactly how I want you to do it. So I'm going to switch my offense to something that I feel like fits you better. And I think Baltimore is doing some of that right now with him. But this 49ers offense would look drastically different if you had Lamar. And I don't know if it would be for better or worse. Like, I don't know that part. We got Dubs TV in the chat. He says, Bleacher Report community is saying that they would rather have 13, which is Brock Purdy. Let's go. We got Antonio Seabrook in the chat. He says, I find it funny how they knock Brock for having too many weapons. But if you look at Dak and Jalen, both have struggled with all their weapons. This is what I would say to that. Stop, stop addressing those people. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, you can say, oh, without the weapons and with this and that, whatever, whatever. Brock Purdy is on the 49ers with these weapons. And this coach. That is his, that is his, that is his scenario. That is his situation. So people that do it doesn't matter what they say. Like, regardless of any of that, Brock is gonna win NFL MVP. So weapons, non-weapons, whatever. They don't look at Dak and Jalen. They not. We do not care. All that matters is how Brock is playing in this offense, how he's functioning, and how he's going to be NFL MVP. Who cares about those other quarterbacks? All right, here we go. And lastly, we got Coco Puff. He says, I'm just happy, and I know BP 2025 salary is just 1.1 million. Yeah, and also, I've seen some people talking about pay cuts and things like that. Brock's going to like Brock Purdy. And again, if he's on a trajectory to be the highest paid quarterback ever, and if he does, I think that's a good thing because he has confirmed that he is who we think he is. Which right now he is. We think he is a terrific quarterback. We think he is awesome. We think he's functioning at a high level. So I'd assume that if he continues this, and executing the offense at an all-time level, he will be paid according to that. And that will make him the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. So he's going to get paid. All this take a pay cut, stuff like that. If you want Brock to take a pay cut, then he's just not who you think he is. Which I don't think the case. I don't think that's the case. We got Travis in the chat. He says Baltimore isn't very good. Lamar went for 177 last game. Lamar won't beat us. The run will. Well, the tough thing is, Travis, Lamar is a part of the run game as well. So you can say he threw for 177, but he also ran for 80 yards. So that's what comes with him. Like it's not just Lamar from the pocket. It's Lamar from the pocket combined with Lamar utilizing his legs. So, it's Baltimore is good. They have a good defense. They fly around. We're going to get into their defense. They fly around. They're hitting hard. They're getting takeaways. And again, I feel like I do this with all these teams. It's like, I talk about all the good things in the 49ers, go out and crush them. But they do some things very well. And they got big bodies on both sides of the ball. And they're going to try to bully the 49ers. I don't think it's going to work. 49ers are bullies, but they ain't no slouches. They are good. It just looks different. It's not going to look like how the 49ers look. There we go. Jay said Lamar ran for 100. I knew he ran for like 80, but I didn't know he ran for 100. Whatever it was, Lamar, you can't just look at his passing numbers and say, oh, he threw for 177 yards. He didn't do good. Because you got to look at his running as well. Eric with a K in the chat says, Croc, if you are taking more callers, I won't today, but we'll get back to that on Thursday. We will get back to it on Thursday. Antonio Seabrook says, I agree with tuning out the negativity about Brock. Was just pointing out how the same rule doesn't apply across the board. Great show. Thank you. I did hear a take from, and I'm about to get to the next caller as well, but I did hear a take from Colin Cowherd. And he was talking about basically how he feels that Christian McCaffrey should be NFL MVP. He's having a historically great year. He's the great white hope. He's probably the greatest running back he's ever seen. That he said that, and he kind of threw a little shot at Brock Purdy, where he talked about how Brock Purdy. He thinks Brock Purdy's going to be one of those guys that the 49ers don't want to pay like you pay Mahomes, like you pay Josh Allen, etc. And because of that, he'll end up being like a journeyman quarterback who was good on the 49ers. I don't know if that's the case, but I do know, again, I think right now what he has proven is he is very valuable to the 49ers. So I'd assume that the 49ers would pay him. But again, a lot of people take that as negativity. I think he was propping up CMC more than trying to put down Brock. But I think once he kind of took that shot at Brock, I think 49 fans kind of tuned him out, whatever he was saying. All right, here we go. Next caller. I got Level coming on. Level, you got to take yourself off mute. And
Yo,
how you doing?
what's good, bro? I'm good, man. I want to say I appreciate you, bro. I know you're a fantastic corner. I've seen you in the league, watched football for many years, and you did a great job. And I love that you're a Niner fan. It makes me happy because you give a great breakdown on how the game goes, man. And I love to hear it and hop in and hear you after the game. So I appreciate that first and foremost.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate
Of
it.
course, bro. So I wanted to hop in. There was just one thing I thought about, and I wanted to hear your take because I know this whole like game manager, game changer, and all that with Brock Purdy is interesting. And we have this conversation coming up with Lamar right now. And there's one player from both of them from this last week that I think emphasizes why I personally prefer the way Brock does it to the way Lamar does it. So in the Sunday night game, Lamar had this one play that Chris Collinsworth went crazy about where he steps back in the pass. Their edge rusher comes off the right side, his right side. And Lamar actually, which I thought was weird, he steps into the pocket, which makes him have to break that tackle where the dude wraps around his neck, but he gets through it, right? And he slides out, steps back up to the right, and kind of like heaves it over to the left pylon, like heaves it over there, double coverage, and likely actually makes an insane catch. Like the catch is crazy between double coverage. But everybody's going crazy about Lamar in that moment. And I'm like, great defense picking that off, personally. That's just me, I think. So that play right there, and everybody goes crazy about Lamar, which I think he does that a lot, and he's surreal and doing stuff like that. But I think that's more great catch than great quarterback. Now, for Brock Purdy, on the other hand, he had that play. We talk about the CMC falling down play. He drops back to pass. Immediately the pocket collapsed. The DT comes through the middle, and he's got to like now run away from this 300-pound DT. He pirouette spins to the backside. Right, he's right-handed. Spins left, curves out, gets enough room so he can now turn and turn his body back again. So he's gone 180, then another, and get himself back squared up 360 out of the pocket. Boom, Christian McCaffrey wide open, like losing himself. I think the safety was locked in on Brock Purdy. That's why Christian McCaffrey slinked in behind him, and
Yeah.
then boom, touchdown. Personally, Brock does that a lot, and it's so clean and efficient, where he just kind of like knows exactly what's around him and how to move and navigate that pocket. I think that's what pushes him past a manager into more of like that's a game changer for
Who
me.
does that remind you of? Like, is there a quarterback? Because as you're explaining that, there's a
Hmm.
quarterback that popped in my mind where I'm like, and it sounds like this guy. But does it remind you of someone at all?
Mm, I mean, it reminds me of a lot of just dynamic quarterbacks that everybody loves that they don't compare him to, but I don't know if it's a specific one. I'd say like I think Lamar is interesting. I think, but I don't know that Lamar. I've seen him really do that. I don't know if I've seen him really.
That what you just explained,
Yeah.
the pocket, kind of rolling out, make a play on the move. You know, it remind me a lot of Tony Romo.
Okay. Okay. I can hear that. I can see that. I can see that. I can
Yeah,
see that.
and I
I
can
can see
see
that.
that like because Romo was never pegged as this, athletic quarterback. And I
Yeah.
think Brock has, more wiggle than him. And I think you're going to continue to see quarterbacks come out that just naturally because of how they train. Like quarterbacks train a different way than they used to. But Romo had that, where it's
Yeah.
like that. Let me spin out of here. Let me make a play. Like let me make a play on the move. Yeah, he did a good job of feeling the pressure, and then being able to make like those kind of throws down the field. So
Yeah.
um, you were explaining that, I'm just like, man, that sounds kind of like Tony Romo.
Yeah, and then that like the knowledge to it's like those two things. Like Lamar, obviously he broke that tackle, but I personally thought he needed to bounce out of the pocket to the right instead of squaring going in, and I think that's why he had to break that tackle.
Yeah.
Which Lamar does that, but I think that's the wrong decision. Thankfully, he got out of it because of his skill set. I think Brock doesn't put himself in bad positions and really tries to find like the right spot to be, even if it's a sack. Like he takes like 1 yard sacks, 2 yard sacks because he realizes it's broken down. And I love the way he navigates and manages the quarterback position that allows him to change the game in a new way. That's what I'm saying.
Nah, and definitely for the 49ers, we watched Jimmy Garoppolo be, I don't even want to say a statue. I know a lot of
Yeah.
people about pre-injury, he moved well, slightly better than
I thought
post-injury.
I thought he did.
I don't think it was as drastic as fans try to make it seem. Like I remember watching him and thinking like he's for because they're like, oh, he used to be a linebacker in high school, and it's like I watch him, I'm like, he moves cool, but it ain't nothing. I think
Wait,
Brock
Jimmy used to be a linebacker?
in high school, yeah,
That's crazy. I didn't know that. That's wild. That's wild. Yeah.
yeah. But I do think though, although he did not move as well as Brock, and I don't think anybody would confuse that for him. I think even post injury, if you just kind of go and watch, if you just throw on highlights,
Yeah.
I think a lot of 49er fans would be surprised with how he would move and make plays.
Yeah.
Like
He
that,
had that.
I can
Yeah.
think of off the top of my head, there was a touchdown to Christian McCaffrey. Like
Mm-hmm.
he didn't throw that from the pocket. Like
Mm-hmm.
he stepped up, stepped back, rolled out, sprint to his right, threw it to the kind of like moved to the. And he moved out the pocket and threw it to like the kind of middle of the corner, the side of the end zone to Christian McCaffrey for a touchdown pass. I think if you looked at highlights, you might see you might see Jimmy move a little better than people say, but definitely not as well as we've seen Brock move.
Yeah, for sure. I think Jimmy had that, and I do think post injury, I think he had enough before injury, and post injury, I think he had it just seemed like a little bit of a hesitance that he had going on, and the hesitance was enough that it made it a lot more easier for the defense. And I think Brock's doesn't really have that hesitation, and he just goes so quickly that it really has put defenses in a bind now and made it a lot more difficult for people to cover us.
Gotcha. How you feeling about the Baltimore game? Because I kind of look at this game and I see a team that, I feel like some of their strengths, uh, you know, some of their strengths are areas where I feel like the 49ers can potentially struggle.
Hmm.
Uh, that can make this game, very, very interesting. I look at Lamar Jackson, and I think he's, again, it starts with him on their team, and I think because of him, I think he elevates the play of a lot of guys around him. I don't think that we'd be talking a whole lot about Gus Edwards or
Hmm.
Keith Mitchell, and I'm not saying they're bad or anything, but I don't think we talk about them the way that people view them if it weren't for Lamar Jackson being in the backfield, with them, or even like Odell Beckham, Zay Flowers. I think he'd be good regardless.
Yeah.
But when you look at these Baltimore Ravens and how Lamar elevates everybody, then how well their defense is playing. What are some of your thoughts on like just how you view this matchup?
Man, I think this is gonna be great. I'm gonna be there. I'm excited. Coming home for Christmas, gonna be with the family, so I'm excited. I think it's gonna be a great game, easily the game of the season for the NFL. Um, I, I mean, truthfully, I'm really interested with what this Baltimore defense is because I've seen them get scored on, and I've seen them hold it down on defenses. I feel like the Jaguars left a lot of points out there, so I'm not fully sure what the Baltimore defense is. I know they got some dogs at middle linebacker, number 0 and number 6. So I want to see what that looks like. I'm looking forward to this matchup because I think it's going to tell us a lot about Brock Purdy's skill set. I think they're going to dial up some stuff, try to confuse Brock Purdy in a way that maybe he hasn't seen before. So I think this is a great test. I'm looking forward to it. I have no like Niners whooping them up. I don't really feel that way, and I think on a mental front, I think with this, obviously with this Eagles loss and as well as the Cowboys and the Lions, this little cushion we have, I think it's going to tell us a lot about the mentality of this team because I've seen Niners have a cushion, to go into the playoffs and stuff like that, and then maybe get a little too laxed, and we've done that before. So I want to see if they come out still hitting hard, still playing fast, because sometimes I think we also don't start fast, and that's been a problem for our offense too. So, but the last couple weeks we've been starting quicker. I like that we started fast and still putting points up. So I want to see that coming forward. If we can start quickly, I feel good about it, man. I truthfully feel good about us straight up playing football against any other team. I feel very, very confident about the 49ers football wise, just up and down.
Awesome stuff. All right, Level Man, appreciate you for coming on.
Appreciate you having me, bro.
All right, all right. I will say I've been seeing in the chat and I see it, Joseph. I'm going to I'm going to assume that you meant that a different way with the whole injury thing with Lamar Jackson. Uh, Maybe you just worded it wrong because you know what I'm saying. Like, football is a game, man. We don't want anybody to get hurt or anything like that. So I assume it just kind of either came out wrong or you worded it wrong and you meant something different. All right. Shout out to everybody that's in the chat right now. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I see we got Sip to Tally. All right, Sip to Tally Films. Hey man, hey, holla at me on Twitter. It says at Eric_Crocker, but you can type in Eric Crocker. My actual Twitter name is uh Crocky 209. All right, but I need some a Ravens person, man, like somebody that does podcasts and stuff with the Ravens, so I can bring them on and we can get some insight on exactly who the Ravens are from the other side, because I can talk about games I watched on TV. I've watched the Ravens about 2-3 times this year, but that's nothing compared to how close attention you pay to them, which I know you pay a lot of attention to the Ravens because you're in here watching the 49ers stream to learn about the 49ers so that you can know more about the Niners and I have an understanding where this game is going. So some Ravens content creators, man, hit me up on Twitter at Crocky209. But appreciate everybody's in the chat, man. We went over a lot today. We talked about a lot. I didn't even know I was going to be here for an hour and a half, damn near. But good stuff. Shout out to all the 49ers. Shout out to everybody here. Shout out to everybody listening to Locked On 49ers, all the everydayers on there. But that's going to do it for this episode. I'll see y'all tomorrow when we got Coach Desi on to talk 49ers injuries and 49ers Ravens. Let's go. Peace.